Hello students, this is lesson 1 for this week on averages. So today we're going to be looking at the three averages as well as the range. Okay. The primary purpose really of today is to prepare you to think about working out average from a table. So I need to recap the basics, so averages from listed numbers. This comes up all over the place in real life, so it's there's lots of real life application to this. You can think about average spend on groceries per month and so on and so forth. So it's an important thing to get your head around. So the first thing I would do is I'd ask you to please define each of these three words that are on the video at the moment. So first one is mode. So you need to write down a definition for mode. Second one is median, and the third one is range. I'm just going to give you a second to do that. Please pause the video and try and write down your own definition. Okay, so the mode means the most common bit of data. So if I'm looking at a list of list of ages of some students, and there are lots of students who are 15 years old because I happen to pick year 11, then the mode from my list would be 15. That's the most common age. One of the mistakes people make here is instead of actually giving the age, they will count how many bits of data there are, and they'll say the mode is, I think I gave the example of 6 or 7 15-year-olds. Well, then they'll say 7. 7 isn't the mode. 7 is the frequency. The mode is in that example 15. The median then is the middle number when you have put them in order. So a really important part of this is that second bit, which a lot of people forget. So put the numbers in order and then pick the middle one. Okay, and finally then the range means the biggest number take away the smallest number. This is a measure of spread. In other words, how spread out the data is. If you've got a very large range, that means that the data is very spread out. If you've got a very small range, that means the data is not very spread out. Now, thinking about this in a context is sometimes helpful. So for instance, if I'm thinking about test scores for a class, so I might look at a class of my students and say, right, the most common mark in this class out of 30 was 22. So that's the mode. The modal mark was 22. So lots of people got 22 marks. A few people might have gotten more than this. A few people might have gotten less than that, but that was the mode. The median mark is the middle when I've put them in order. So after I've marked all their work, I we'll order those from the weakest or the lowest mark up to the strongest mark, and the middle mark, that would be my middle child, my median student. And finally, the range in that context would be the score that the best person got, subtract the score that the weakest person got, and that tells me how spread out the data is, how varied the data is in that class. And ideally, for a teacher, you don't really want a big range, because if there's a big range, that might mean that there's students who need to move set. So if I end up with a range of, 16, 17 marks, that means the difference between the worst student and the best student in that class was 17 marks, which is a lot. So probably a student needs to move up a set, or a student at the bottom end needs to move down a set. Okay, so we shouldn't expect such a big range in class tests. Anyway, let's move on to actually working them out. There's one average we haven't talked about, which is the mean, and this picture describes it as the mean one, because that is the only one that you really need to do some maths in order to work out. So to work out the mean, you need to add together all of the data, all of the numbers you've got, and divide it by how many there are. So back to my class example, if I add together all the scores that everybody got in that test, and let's say there's 27 students in the class, I'll divide that answer by 27, and that will tell me the mean score. Each of these averages has their own use, and that's important for you to remember. The reason that there are three is because sometimes one of them may be less useful, or more useful I should say, than the other two. Think for example about something like shoe size. If I were to work out the average shoe size using the mean, of a class, I might get an average of 6.325, size 6.325. If I go to the shop and say, can I have a size 6.325 shoe, they're going to laugh at me because it's not an appropriate average for that bit of data. So I'd probably be more likely to use the median or the mode. Anyway, enough talk. Let's have a look at an example. Can you please work out the mean of this bit of data? I know it says teacher example, however, I think that you, at this stage of your schooling, should be able to work this out yourself. We've just defined it, add them together and divide it by how many there are. Pause the video, press play when you're ready to see the answer. So, what you should have done was add these together. 4 add 7, add 7, add 8, add 6, add 9, add 8. That is a non-calculator question. You should be able to do this without a calculator. Gives you a total of 49. And as you should all know, 49 does come in the 7 times table. There are 7 numbers there, so 49 divided by 7 gives me an average of 7. Or a mean, I should say, of 7. Now, whilst we're on the point here, this is a good example to look at mode, because this is an example of data that is bimodal. Okay, bimodal means there are 2 modes. The reason I say that is because if I look at the data I have, there are 2 7s and there are 2 8s. So the most common number is 7 or 8. Okay, so you can say that this is bimodal. So if the question asked you to work out the mode, you would say that the mode is 7 and also 8 because there are 2 8s. Okay. Here are 3 sections of questions for you to try. Okay. First one, mode and median and range. Second one, just the mean. And the third one is a challenge really to try and get you thinking about what could the data be. Okay. Once you have answered these questions, please write down your answers on a piece of paper, take a picture of that, and upload it to ClassCharts to complete today's remote learning. Thank you very much, students.